and crystals is pretty clear. And we're going to come back to this because what I just read is really important. Now, I'm going to be basically going through a few articles on a few sources so you can see and understand. One, because we got to refute the first thing I read about, crystals having absolutely no effect on people, so on and so forth. You have to really, when you go into it, it doesn't make any sense when we're talking about, as I said, the body producing these crystals, and there has to be this connection where you understand. But it's more to it as we're going to get into. But it doesn't fit, that you have these crystals everywhere. They are all over the world. They are abundant. They make up a large part of the earth itself, and we produce them. Think about that. So you got to look at that fact. You got to look at the fact that, one, we take for granted a lot of stuff. And that's one of the things I said. You really have to stop taking for granted a lot of stuff that's given to us. I look at cell phones still to this day, and they blow my mind. I mean, they just blow my mind, like what they can do. This little thing can do so much, yet it could not work without these quartz crystals, without these crystals and little rocks that you don't even know the name of. But it's a lot of components in there that we take for granted that is essential to our phones and TVs and everything working. We understand about memory cards can store a shitload of memory on a memory card. And it's like, how? I mean, it's data, large amounts of data. It's because of crystals. Now it says here, and I'm going to read a lot of articles because you got to, as I said, you got to really have a comparison to what I just read, because the first thing people are going to say when you pull up the article, or when you, make any kind of reference to crystals working, they're going to pull up that article because it's been there. And I had people do this, and I'm had to go through a lengthy conversation and break it down to them why that don't make sense. You understand what I'm doing right here? But I want to give you guys and read to you guys a lot of different things so you can know where to draw from besides this video to basically get information when you're talking about crystals and how they work. A lot of people just not going to have this information or even know where to go to look. But it's a lot of things you got to think about as towards the power of crystals, as we're talking about, as we can see with our phones and TVs and everything else. Now, if we are energetic beings, you got to make that connection, which I'm going to make at the end. But it says here, Superman crystals could store 360 terabytes of data forever. Now, we'll get into this in a second. Now, researchers have been able to demonstrate the ability to read and write data using a 5-dimensional recording process in a synthetic crystal to store massive amounts of data indefinitely. The researchers led by Jingayu Zhang from the University of Southampton in the UK successfully recorded a 300 kilobyte data copy of a text file onto nanostructured glass in 5D using ultra-fast and intense pulse laser. The file was written in 3 layers of nanostructured dots separated by 5 micrometers, which is crazy, micrometers, which is 5 millionths of a meter. The scientists use a femtosecond laser, which emits pulses of light in femtoseconds. That's 1 quadrillionth or 1 millionth of a billionth of a second. It's crazy. The 5D read-write laser can record up to an estimate of 360 terabyte data disk capacity on nanostructured glass, capable of thermal stability up to 1000 degrees Celsius and a practically unlimited lifetime. So now it's a big deal of understanding how we can store massive amounts of information in crystals. We know they model computers off the human brain. But understanding how you can store this data in crystals is something that they understood by understanding DNA. We have DNA crystals. We understand DNA contains so much information that make up us. Plain and simple, massive amounts of information. Crystal form, crystals, DNA crystals is a big thing that they have, so many different fields dedicated to this fact. So it says here, scientists achieved the first stable, and I don't like this, simulations of DNA crystals, which is crazy. I'm just going to read this part here. It says, since the birth of structural biology, X-ray crystallography has been the most widely used technique to determine the 3-dimensional structure of biomolecules. The chemical compounds found in living organisms. In this regard, knowledge of the interactions between the biomolecules with their crystal environment and the molecular forces that stabilize the crystals would serve to optimize this technique. Now understand, if they are simulating or creating some kind of synthetic crystalline DNA, crystal DNA, I mean, they are basically fabricating the structure for the creation of the human body. It's cloning, basically. It's amazing. But if you're doing that, we're talking about not just cloning, but creating somebody with that DNA pattern, with that information. Basically, since, your DNA is containing all information from your past and from just the makeup of life, which is another thing that, not to jump off track, but you got to think about that. How the hell, and this is how you got to really look at stuff sometimes. One, we're passing down information. The fact that your child learns how to walk, that's DNA information passed down. The fact that your child knows how to talk later on, and everything that it learns how to do is passed down through DNA. It's programming passed down. The crazy part about the past life being wiped, what is that? What is that process? That everything is wiped except for the basic components for the operating system. So you got to look at it in terms of a computer system. If you go ahead and factory reset your computer, everything is going to be gone unless you click that option to keep everything. But everything is going to be gone. What's going to be left is the OS and the stuff that came with the OS to run a computer. But all that data and pictures and all that stuff, gone, plain and simple. So you got to think about that with DNA and passing down that information. And we pass it down. It's just the basic building blocks for us, and we keep the stuff about walking and talking and everything like that. The knowledge we don't, and that shows you that there's this connection, a separate connection from just DNA and consciousness. It's different. Consciousness is what is you. It's what you take with you. This DNA and walking and talking and mechanics of the body. It's a different program. And this whole crystalline and understand this whole crystalline structure of the DNA, how information is passed down, kind of shows you that if you understand what I'm saying. But the fact that they can simulate that is deep. It's crazy that they can basically go ahead and take the information needed to go ahead and build the body. And with that, it's still traits. It's still in there, it's still locked in there. So you can sing because your mama sang, or you can draw because your daddy drew, or you can play ball because your dad did. And those little traits is still within there as well. You don't lose everything. There's some little pieces that you keep. Features. You look like your mama. Got the same kind of nose, stuff like that. Those type of features, traits, all that stuff is still within there. You get a little teeny, it's filtered down, it's a little teeny bit when you had that child and they come back and they have these features. All that stored within the DNA. It's crystalline, it's crystals, crystalline DNA, same structure, the same thing we're talking about, holding massive amounts of data within crystals, within you. Make that connection, because we got to understand, the body holds that memory. It holds it. So the growth of muscles, tendons and so on and so forth, how something is going to grow, where it's going to grow out to. I mean, we don't even think about the measurements itself. That's the whole makeup of the body. You're going to grow this tall, this length, so on and so forth. This is all information. It's all stuff. It's like a computer program. It's like codes. All that stuff is information. It's all within you. It's within your skin, your genes, your DNA. It's all there. It's time sensitive like a mug. During this time, or when the body receives a certain amount of this activates. It's like programs, so on and so forth. Massive amounts of information in the body. It's the same when we think about crystals. It's really no different. And we got to look at it like that. So when we're talking about, being able to program minds and bodies and so on and so forth, and being able to induce certain chemicals to make stuff stop hurting, to numb stuff that we see doctors do all the time. It's a lot of stuff that can be done to show you how the body is similar to computers, and how we have this information field within our body, this information DNA within us that can be tampered with and changed, and them making some kind of synthetic form of the crystalline structure of a DNA, which, if you ever seen it before, it looks like a kaleidoscope. It's actually beautiful, and it's something amazing. But we got to look at that and think about that in the same type of context as crystals, our body, and the connection that we should have Forget what the article was talking about. This is a connection that should exist since we talk about stuff that exists within us. So the Earth's crust that we walk on is basically made up of crystals and rocks with electrical producing properties. So if you ever heard of people say you have to ground this wire, people doing work on a house or doing construction, they're talking about, you have to ground the wire. Now, if you go into a house and you see a lot of the sockets look like this, then that means that house probably has fuse boxes instead of a circuit breaker. So when you see that little hole at the bottom that looks like this here, that hole means there's a grounded wire. It's for grounded wires. That's giving the circuit something to pass through, which is basically the ground. So you probably seen a model before. It's like you're working on a house and let's say the wire that's here somehow comes detached and it's touching the metal part of this socket here. If somebody comes along and begins to do work on this socket and they touch it, they're going to get electrocuted if there is no ground wire. You know what I'm saying? You understand? So there's no way for the signal to be relayed to the circuit breaker or the fuse box to cut off so the person doesn't get electrocuted. Circuit breaker only, because the fuse box, mostly they don't do that. They have to take fuses. So basically, if somebody comes now with the wire being exposed and touching the metal base of this, they come and touch it, they're going to get electrocuted. So by having a ground wire, what happens is once the circuit is not complete, or if you go and you plug in like an old broke TV or any type of electrical equipment that don't work, you plug it in, it's going to blow the circuit breaker because the signal is going to be sent to the box to shut the box off. Now, if that signal is no ground wire there, no signal will be sent. So the live wire that's exposed, basically, if anybody touch it, they're going to get electrocuted. And this is how you have fires happen, inside the walls and stuff like that, because there's nothing there to cut the circuit, to cut the flow of electricity flowing through. Like if you plug something in that's bad into the wall, or while something is plugged in, it shorts out, and then now you have this continuous circuit, keep going, not shutting off the breaker. It's keep flowing through the walls, and eventually something's going to catch on fire. You're going to have electrical fire within the walls, house to burn down. By having it grounded, the signal is basically sent back to the box to shut off and cut off all power. And when that happens, you go to the breaker. If the breaker don't work, it's something within the walls, and you can fix that. So it's important to have that ground wire. So they got to think about it. The earth is made and ready for energy to flow through it. Think about that. We all walking on this earth. You have energy flowing through it. It's made for energy to flow through it. And if you think if we had control over our energy and how everything is connected to the earth in some way, shape, or form, and we're walking, we're touching the ground, there is this connection. It's one of the reasons why a lot of these hippies, a lot of these earthers talk about, walking around with your shoes off in the grass and everything like that, being connected to the earth. It's a lot of stuff that sounds real crazy and spooky when you talk about crystals having powers and so on and so forth. People talking about barefoot in the grass. A lot of people won't get it. They won't understand it and make that connection because it requires a lot of information. But it's truth to it. But if you think about if you can control that energy, how we could communicate differently with each other, with animals, with trees, with so on and so forth, by having this energy connection with the earth itself, and understanding as well, you have energy just out there. When we talk about Tesla and wireless energy and everything like that, it's out there. The earth, the atmosphere, everything, this whole system we live in is set and ready for our energy to be connected to it. So when we're talking about this connection that we're supposed to have, we've lost that connection. It's basically gone. It's a connection that we once had. It's the connection that the ancient Egyptians was talking about getting back. And just thinking about being locked in and tapped in to being connected to everything, to all of a sudden, you're out. And you're like, woo, trying to figure out what the hell happened and get this connection back and understand, how you was tapped into this energy flow that seems to be put here and was, available to us, but we lost the knowledge of how to really tap into it.